Splitting shingles can be easy or it can be tough, and it ultimately comes down to you.
Wrong. Actually, the biggest determining factor in whether you're going to have an easy or difficult time making shingles is the quality of the timber itself. Timber that's dry is a real struggle to split and shave. If the log has knots, forget it. Use it for firewood or fence rails or charcoal or anything. Don't try to use it for shingles. When I took an order for 6 squares of shingles back in February of this year from the History Museum in South Bend, Indiana, I knew it was going to be a real challenge. Just getting the materials I needed in time would be a nerve-wracking struggle. The most I've made in a 3-month stretch is about 4 squares, but 6 was really going to be a new adventure. The goal was to have these shingles delivered to Indiana by the end of July. It can take up to 2 weeks to finish 1,000 shingles. Sometimes more of the logs are not that great. It takes considerably less time if the logs are almost perfect. Most of the logs I ended up with, though, would be average at best. With my first couple of timbers cut and hauled back home, it was time to really get started. The first step is to cut a block in half, and then cut it in half again, and again, and yet again, until it's about the size of a chunk of firewood. With so many shingles to make, I decided to try something different. My uncle brought his wood splitter out for me to try, and I got started. It wasn't terrible, but it was slow and unreliable. By the way, I'm currently building a specially designed shingle splitter, so make sure you subscribe and stick around to see how it works out. My uncle's wood splitter was just way too slow. Of course, it was less labor intensive, but far too slow. When a hydraulic hose finally blew, God damn it! I just gave up and went back to the old-fashioned way. With a froe, shingles can be split relatively quickly. Ultimately, though, splitting is the easy part. The real work lies with the dressing. In no time at all, I had several squares just split and ready to dress. And that's where the real work starts. The sapwood needs to be knocked off first. And then each edge needs to be shaved straight and even. Then, with a draw knife, each shingle needs to be shaved, top and bottom. When the material is still green, it shaves perfectly. But when it's dried out, it becomes a real pain in the ass. To get around this, I soaked them in water when it was absolutely necessary. It was a bit messy, but it was far better than trying to shave dried out white oak. Dressing is not only the most difficult, but it's also probably the most important step. Incidentally, I don't call these shakes. Shakes are now implied to have a rough texture, uneven, giving a finished roof some kind of a rustic appearance. The grooves in the surface take away from the quality of the finished product and have no place on historic work. They are inaccurate historically, and the materials are generally pretty bad. 200 years ago, there were laws regulating shingles. These laws were passed by many different states, and they were surprisingly consistent. The shingles should be 3/8 to half an inch thick on the butt end, well shaved, no less than 3 inches wide, and an average of 4 or 4.5 inches wide. My shingles were made with these regulations in mind. The deadline was fast approaching, and I was only about 2/3 of the way finished, and I was out of good logs and totally stuck. Less than a week before I was scheduled to deliver the shingles, I finally got a call that more logs were available at the mill. At this point, it was a race against the clock, and I prepared for a few sleepless nights to catch up. The folks in South Bend offered to reschedule. When they made this offer, I fell down to my knees and thanked God for this relief. Don't get me wrong, I could have made it, but they really saved my life. Maybe not literally, or, well, maybe it was literally. I don't know. For the next couple of weeks, I continued splitting shingles while still working on the ongoing spring house project. With the shingles finished, I took the first load out in early September. They seemed happy with the product, rescheduled their new installation date, and I got ready to bring the second load. It's an 11-hour drive each way, across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and most of Indiana, but it wasn't too bad. I was very lucky. The fellows directing the work knew their business, and I could just stand back and let them go. My own contributions were minimal, just carrying shingles up the scaffolding once in a while and giving a demonstration of shingle making. This included giving one volunteer from Notre Dame a chance to try her hand at making a shingle. I let her keep the shingle she made as a souvenir, with the understanding that if we ran out, we're coming to get that shingle. The city of South Bend is a very pleasant place to visit, and this is as close to a vacation as I've had in many years. I spent Saturday night counting the shingles to make sure they had enough. I knew it was going to be close, but after counting, I was fairly certain they had enough. I always hate pulling away from a job site when fellas are still working. It always makes me feel like a deserter. The drive home was uneventful at first, but then I got a call when I hit the Pennsylvania line that really got my blood boiling.
Ist das Feiglinge! Verhalten versicht sie! Das war ein Befehl! Der Angriff Steiners war ein Befehl! Sie nennen sich Generale, weil sie Jahre auf Militärakademien zugebracht haben, nur um zu lernen, wie man besser von allem Anfang an bin ich so verraten und betrogen wird. Mit dem Widerstand in den Weg gelegt. Ich hätte gut daran getan, von Jahren alle höheren Offiziere liquidieren zu lassen, wie Stalin. Jeder hat mich belogen, sogar die SS. Die gesamte Generalität ist nichts weiter als ein Haufen niederträchtiger Treuloser. Mit ihrem eigenen Blut werden sie werden ersaufen in ihrem eigenen Blut. Zahlen.
Unmöglich unter diesen Umständen.
And they did it. Hopefully, the History Museum in South Bend will enjoy a beautiful and well-made roof for decades to come. I charged $800 a square for the shingles, with an extra $100 per square tacked on for shipping. That covered my fuel expenses anyway. If you've made it this far, make sure you hit that subscribe button and add a like. It really does help us out.